Welcome back to today's video. Today is Tuesday, October 7th, 2025. Apologies for the 3 videos today. I wanted to make sure that I was covering a lot of timely topics and realized that I had not yet made a video about today's topic, which is Adelita Grijalva, Arizona's 7th Congresswoman-elect. Elected in a special election that we received some pretty strong primary coverage that went right into a general election where we saw that a massive overperformance happened in Arizona's 7th district. A district that Kamala Harris won by 22 percentage points was won by the Democrat, Adelita Grijalva, by 40 percentage points in the Arizona 7th District special election, to which, after her election, it was very clear and apparent on election night in a safe Democratic district that she was, in fact, going to win her race. But since that election took place roughly a week ago, we have now seen that Speaker Mike Johnson has refused to seat Adelita Grijalva until the latest possible date, which is set to take place in just about 7 days. Now, this comes as Mike Johnson faces major scrutiny over the vote on the Epstein files, as Thomas Massie, who's leading the discharge petition, the petition in the House of Representatives that would force the Trump administration to overturn in a very public way the records surrounding Jeffrey Epstein. The 218 votes needed to get this discharge petition officially said and done for over to the White House and receive those files is being held up by one singular vote. Every single Democrat has signed on to the discharge petition, but just a few Republicans have done so as well. And since Democrats do not have the majority in the House of Representatives, they need just one more signature. Right now it's at 217, and they need 218. And so Adelita Grijalva, who has been very public that she would sign the discharge petition, now is saying that this is suspicious, that the delay in seating her is something that is very bad, not only for her constituents, who are out of a representative, but for the nation at large, who does not have the ability to receive these files and see the information that the White House and the Department of Justice are safeguarding and keeping to themselves. This signature holds a lot of monumental weight because what it would do is essentially force everything to be unearthed on the national stage and force Republicans to also take up a very conscious stance here as Mike Johnson continues to delay the vote on the Epstein files. The White House has already publicly come out and told every single Republican that signing the discharge petition would be seen as an act of agitation against the White House and to the offense of Donald Trump. The benefit for all of the Republicans, the 4 that have done so and signed onto this petition, is that they will be safeguarded in their primary because their constituents largely like this type of combative attitude that they have not only towards Democrats, but also towards the Trump administration and, at least on this end, fighting for the Epstein files to be released. And for whatever reason, right, you can find that these representatives want it to happen. At the end of the day, the optics on this are very bad for the Republicans, and the refusal to seat a duly elected congresswoman out of fear of what it might do for the Epstein files is absolutely unheard of and something that Republicans just simply cannot win the PR battle on. And I think that they saw exactly what this Arizona 7th District results were saying, and I think it worried the Republicans quite a bit. A district where the majority of the residents are Latino, a district that overwhelmingly voted for a Democrat after voting for Kamala Harris, yes, by a pretty significant amount. But there is a massive difference in winning a district by 39.5 and 22.1. A massive difference. And when you think about what exactly the message that was sent here, Arizona's 7th district, if this district had voted this way for Kamala Harris on the presidential level, and let's say the swing that we saw in the Arizona 7th results was replicated in every single district, red and blue in Arizona, Kamala Harris would have won the state of Arizona, and if replicated on the national stage, you best believe she would have been president of the United States. So the Republicans know that the results they saw in Arizona were not what they wanted to see. This was the first real special election where there was a huge proportion of the vote share coming from Hispanic voters that Republicans had promised with this ushering in of Donald Trump's victory that they were going to be dominating amongst Hispanic and Latino voters for generations to come. But in 6 months after Donald Trump's inauguration, it's nowhere to be seen. Now, in terms of also just putting aside, this huge advantage that Democrats really took over the Republicans in the Arizona 7th District, you also have to look at it from the lens of What has the historical precedent been for swearing in candidates right after special elections? Well, if we look back at any of the special elections that have taken place for Congress this cycle, the 2 seats that went to the Republicans, you best believe that within 24 hours of these signatures, within 24 hours of these results coming in, these elected members were made congresspeople. Randy Fine sworn in less than 24 hours later. Jimmy Patronis sworn in less than 24 hours later, and it isn't just contained to Republicans. In Virginia's 11th district, when James Walkinshaw won the congressional election in the 2025 special race back in September, 24 hours later, granted, Walkinshaw can drive to the nation's capital from, home district in 35 minutes. But that doesn't change the fact that Adelita Grijalva has been in Washington, D.C. for the past week and is still not seated. Because the significance of that nomination and swearing in Florida's 1st and Florida's 6th wasn't really as, important, because these were going to be party line votes for Donald Trump and Mike Johnson. They were never going to have to worry about these Republicans by any metrics. They were never going to have to worry, are these congresspeople going to turn on us on Epstein, or are they going to turn on us on Trump? Because they weren't. And even when it came down to this Virginia election, you might be thinking, okay, then why did he seat James Walkinshaw? Well, because the numbers on the discharge petition, the numbers surrounding the forced vote on Jeffrey Epstein as well, were not there and were not high enough for the Democrats and Republicans to even see this as a possibility. But now, with 1 additional seat, it can be done. And yet Mike Johnson is playing parliamentarian games to try to hold off this swearing in as much as possible. And he can deny it. But everyone knows on the right and the left exactly why he is doing it. Even the top Trump allies know that this 7 days that he is trying to hold off on the Epstein vote is all to the benefit of the Trump administration and the optics for the GOP. But unfortunately, voters don't like when people play games like this, especially in states like Arizona, where I can guarantee you this: the reputation of the Republican Party mildly recovered. In 2024, Republicans were able to really hone in on issues that mattered a lot to Arizona residents, arguably more than in other states. Issues like the southern border crisis, illegal immigration, jobs in the economy, especially as a swing state. Donald Trump exploited the unpopular nature of Biden's presidency, the lagging support for the Democratic Party across the board in the state, and a massive, massive change in dynamic for Hispanic voters in the state, where prioritization of social issues came to the forefront of the past cycle. The forefront that really benefited Donald Trump in Arizona. But what we have seen is that Arizona has and continues to be willing to punish Republicans who they deem not fit for their office. In the coinciding Senate race in Arizona, Kari Lake, who has taken on a number of extreme tactics and extreme policy standpoints, and this is not to discredit Gallego's very well-run campaign, but it is to say that it worked in tandem with a Republican who was not becoming of the state. And while Mike Johnson holding off on a 7th district rep isn't going to turn Arizona blue, it does send the message back home and across the state that Republicans, out of fear of Epstein or whatever it is, because that's the way the narrative has been spun successfully for the Democrats, Republicans are not seating Arizona's first ever Latina congresswoman. No matter how you cut it, the Republicans do not win the optics on this because they are trying to hold off on 7 more days. But the good news for Democrats is that Mike Johnson can't just do this forever. He is going to have his hand forced, and he's going to do it the moment the House comes back into session because he has to. Because that's when legally he is required to swear her in. The results are clear. This was not a close election. There are no accusations of voter fraud. There are no, conversations about, was this election fair or not? She won by 40 points. I mean, you are talking about potentially one of the largest margins of victory we have seen for congresspeople, save any uncontested race without an opposition party. Adelita Grijalva's result here is one of the most clear, and it was clear the moment the first poll closing happened. In fact, It was clear weeks in advance of the first poll closing to happen because this district is safe. It was a special election on a truncated timeline in a district that voted for Kamala Harris by 22 and voted for every single Democrat for president dating back decades. And so the idea, the mere idea that in this year, this congresswoman is still not seated, despite every other special election, Republican and Democrat, because it didn't have that 218 number yet as the turning point for Democrats, everyone was seated within 24 hours. In this case, that just doesn't seem to be happening. And so thinking about what we might expect, thinking about what the next steps are for Democrats, it'll be interesting to see exactly how Mike Johnson tries to spin this, because he already has been. He's been saying this is a red herring, that all these different things, that he wants the numbers to be out, he wants the files to be released, then why hasn't he signed the discharge petition, right? Why haven't any of these people, why haven't any of these, Republicans who say they want to see the data out there, and they want to see not just the data, but the files, everything surrounding the criminal investigation, every piece of information that the Department of Justice has, because the American public arguably does have the right to know. The American public very reasonably, wants this to be something. Republicans and Democrats alike, the majority of this nation, it is very hard to find that 3/4 of this nation can agree on anything, and they agree the Epstein files should be made public. And so if this Democrat, Adelita Grijalva, is sworn into Congress, it would have to happen now. But they're waiting. They're playing games with the parliamentary rules that allow them to wait as long as absolutely necessary. But it is completely unheard of in normal politics that you would do this. But we are not in normal politics. We are in a new normal where this seems to be something that is standard and done. And so I've come to really understand that as we've navigated the weird and existential politics of the 2025 cycle, it really is fascinating to see exactly what shenanigans and maneuvers are being pulled on both sides, arguably, to get the outcome they want. Whether it is Mike Johnson refusing to seat Grijalva, whether it is Trump going to Texas and forcing the state legislators' hands and say, you need to redraw your map, whether it's Ron DeSantis asking for a new drawn census so Florida can get additional congressional seats, whether it is Gavin Newsom going to the voters and saying, you make a decision, but you can see there's a distinction there. And I think that when we see this, voters see it too, that these headlines are not lost on the public that already feels disaffected with Trump, that already feels disaffected with the GOP, that feels like on Epstein at least, among many other issues too, like immigration, the economy, foreign policy, the war in Gaza, whatever it is, that Donald Trump has maneuvered himself away from the policies that he ran on versus the policies he is implementing. He said on day one, he would fix the economy, he would fix the southern border, he would stop the war in Ukraine, he would end the war in Gaza, that he would release the Epstein files, and yet none of it seems to have been done. None of it seems to be in this position where voters can adequately and confidently say things are happening. Maybe they'll say this, right? Mass deportations are happening, right? The militarization and the nationalization of the police force in Washington, D.C., and the National Guard being deployed to different U.S. cities, that is happening. And maybe that's something that satisfies the appetite of some of Donald Trump's voters. But on issues like this, especially surrounding Epstein, it is clear why Mike Johnson is not seating this Democrat, because there are implications far beyond just allowing one member of Congress back into the chamber, because that's just it. There's a lot more at stake, and Republicans are worried, and Trump is too. And it's showing. And Mike Johnson, who can claim all he wants, that he believes that he wants the Epstein files to be released, he has yet to even seat the Democrat who would allow that to happen. So, we'll see. Do Republicans win this PR battle? Do they go ahead and seat this congresswoman early after mounting pressure? We'll see. But chances are Mike Johnson is going to wait as long as possible to benefit Trump and the Republican Party, but it is only just days away that the discharge petition receives the 218 signatures necessary in order for these files to be released. And it will be very interesting to see exactly how Republicans and Democrats navigate the next weeks and months as they go through it, and as it gets very public and it becomes a very top issue going into the midterms. And right now, Mike Johnson is doing everything he can to hold it off, but at some point, the dam will burst. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video for you to watch, and then a playlist for my 2026 House election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.